Chiefs Kingdom, welcome into the latest edition of the AP Film Room on the Arrowhead Pride YouTube page. We're hanging out here as usual, talking Chiefs football, and you may see a new face on the screen. You got our beautiful familiar faces, me and Nate. Me, the lead analyst at ArrowheadPride.com, and Nate, one of our great film analysts. But we added to the team this week, and we got another great film analyst, another great addition to the squad. Caleb James is joining AP. He's a writer here with arrowheadpride.com now, and I want to get him on the AP Film Room because I really respect his film takes and everything. He's been a good follow on Twitter. So, Caleb, I just gave you a heck of an intro. Hope you're not blushing too hard. But hey, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing good, man. I appreciate you guys having me on, letting me join up with your squad and everything, and let's get to it.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah, no, we got a lot to get into. I'm in a good mood. I got Caleb here. I got my guy Nate here, but we are coming off of a very frustrating, very infuriating loss. And Nate, you watched Sunday. I know you had a lot of takes, and we all had takes, but I don't know, man. Is that frustration settled at all? How you feeling? A little bit after that Cincinnati, the third straight loss to the Bengals.
Oh, well, by now, I'm over it. It's Thursday now. I wasn't, if we had recorded this a couple days ago, might have been a little bit stronger, but it was the first game I've been actually mad at, and probably since that Tennessee game last year where we got blown out. Because, when we ended the season last year, it was more sad than upset. The Colts game was fluky and the Bills are really good. So this was the first game I was genuinely upset. Part of it is because I probably wanted it too bad. I really wanted to win this game more than I do normal regular season games, but by now, I'm over it. It's just a regular season game.
Caleb, are you feeling any similar ways? Are you getting over this loss? I mean, everyone took it hard to an extent, but how you feeling on this Thursday night now?
Man, it's one of those weird losses where it just felt inevitable that the Chiefs were going to come away with a victory, but at the end, they just didn't execute down the line, and I think the Bengals once again took advantage of the same things they did the last two times last year, the two games last year.
Yep.
And, they found what the Chiefs don't do well this year, and they just exploited them on it for 60 minutes. So I'm upset, but it's hard to be mad at a great effort like that by Cincinnati. I mean, they were flawless mostly all game.
Man, that is true. That's an underrated point. Is the Bengals just played really well, and they have played well, but they're even better than they were last year. And Joe Burrow is very good. And speaking of Joe Burrow, Nate, you looked at the defense for us this week at arrowheadpride.com. We had a few film articles on the defense, but you got the defense today, and there was definitely not some fun clips of film to watch from that side of the ball, I would say. But what did you see from this matchup, and what can we take away from the Chiefs' defensive performance?
Yeah, I mean, just from a general overview sense, it was bad. The film was bad. There was nothing redeeming about it in any ways. They just got their butts kicked in every way. Run game, pass game, whatever coverage they were playing. They couldn't generate any pressure at all. So when you see one of those games, it's really frustrating. It was especially frustrating to watch live because early in that game, I knew we were going to have some lumps, but nothing was working. Spags, he was trying things, right or wrong, but they just weren't working. Even the blitz, we had one pressure all day through the blitz, and we probably blitzed 10 times. Nothing just was working. They were throwing everything they could, and nothing was sticking. And my notes were pretty long, but one of my main takeaways from the game and what I wrote about was that I think this, we have a 3-game sample now against Joe Burrow where we have lost. And the one kind of thing that's been linear through all games, the thing that we've seen in all games, is that we just haven't been able to pressure Joe Burrow. Everybody else in the NFL has found ways to sack him, to pressure him, to beat their offensive line, except the Chiefs. Chiefs have had no success. Joe Burrow this week had 25 clean pocket dropbacks out of 32. That's crazy. You just, against this Bengals offensive line, which is playing better, that's just not sustainable. So part of the thing was okay, why? Why is this continually a problem? And to me, I think it just starts with our edge rushers. So I'll pull up the clips here. There was 3 main things that were kind of noticeable. Mainly 2, but this was kind of a trend from last year as well. the first thing that you talk about, and we kind of know this about the Chiefs defensive ends, is their lack of flexibility, right? We have longer defensive ends, heavier defensive ends that don't necessarily rush up the arc super well. So I'm kind of just going to let these clips play out and talk. You can kind of see like Carlos Dunlap here, Mike Dana. I'll roll this back a bit. Like they're just a little bit slower up the arc. They do get some like decent dip, but like both these tackles are able to push them upfield when they try and kind of go around the corner. Burrow's just easily able to kind of step up, hit the hole, and cover two. I'll kind of go in a different angle here.
And another thing on that is Jones's double team, which was a very big part of the Bengals game plan for sure, was double teaming Jones constantly.
I'm glad you mentioned that.
And forcing other players to make one-on-one rushes, right?
Yeah, so this is, I can't remember who wrote the article. I should, but like it was a very good article talking about like the Bengals basically just slid to Chris Jones the entire game, and they did not respect any potential blitz. They didn't respect this 2-eye right here, which is typically where your center will slide to because he has a two-way go. So they were basically just like, we do not trust any of your pass rushers to win outside of Chris Jones, and they were proven right. So just get back to it, like Mike Dana trying to get around the corner, Carlos Dunlap trying to get around the corner. These guys just don't have the flexibility to do it. And from a quarterback sense, like Burrow is able to take deeper drops in the pocket, and he never has to worry about stepping into pressure. He never has to worry about running into his lineman's feet, excuse me. And it's, we know this about the Chiefs defensive ends, obviously. We know that they have kind of a lack of flexibility, but it's really frustrating because that was kind of the main way they were trying to rush this week. Here's George Karlaftis. I know Karlaftis kind of gets a weird start here. He tries to kind of go with speed first and he gets jumps at it, but like you kind of watch his feet. Like he just doesn't have great speed, great fluidity. He has to stop twice to try and get around this offensive tackle. Like, we know that George isn't the most like flexible, bendy guy, but it was a problem like this week, and it was a problem for these other guys. But it wasn't just flexibility, right? Like I said, we know this. The thing that made me so mad this week is that we had no pocket crushing at all. We could not watch Frank Clark.
Which is what they're supposed to be doing, right?
Yes. And I know Frank has lost weight, right? Like we know Frank came into the season a lot lighter. Look at him. There's nothing there. Watch him versus Jonah Williams. He does not get any push on the pocket at all. This is a problem throughout the entire game. Frank could not push the pocket at all. Carlos Dunlap, Mike Dana, they were not pushing the pocket well at all. George Karlaftis. There was one good rep, but like here you go. Like Dunlap, he's going to power. Well, like obviously he spins first, but it doesn't work. He's going to come Mike Dana on a stunt. He doesn't generate a lot of push. The Chiefs have all these longer, supposedly powerful, strong defensive ends, but they don't generate a lot of power. But it kind of goes back to their issue with flexibility. If you're an offensive tackle and you don't have to worry about anyone going around your shoulder, all you have to do is kind of keep your hips closed, keep your anchor down, and just you don't have to worry about a defensive end, running around you. So it's a lot easier to just squat down, punch him, and anchor, right? So, again, this is a problem because Joe Burrow does not have to worry about stepping up into the pocket, scrambling at all. He's just able to stand still, pick apart zone. Like, the Chiefs' zone defense was atrocious this week. But it wouldn't have mattered. Like, it wasn't mattering at all. So, when you're combining the fact that you can't crush the pocket and you can't get around the corner, what are you doing? Like, there's nothing you can do as a defensive end. And the Bengals just flat out put their tackles on islands. They didn't chip. And they were just saying, like, we do not respect your defensive ends to win. And they were proven right. And here's the last point, and I'll just run through this quick. Let's watch the two differences in this clip. And I know you probably want to talk about this, Rob, but let's watch Frank Clark, who comes in late on a blitz. Watch the difference in his athleticism. In a second here. He's going to drop into coverage first. Then he's going to try and turn the corner here. And it was a tough angle to take. We talked about this. I do think he probably could have gone inside. I don't know why he didn't. When he decides to go to the court, he stops. Like he just doesn't have the range, the athleticism to turn that tight corner, to chase Burrow down. He has to kind of stop his feet and then try and gain speed again. Now let's compare that to Joseph Osai, and I know we'll talk about this clip later, so I won't break it down. But watch Joseph Osai, this young pass rusher that the Chiefs didn't draft, but that's okay. He's going to chase Patrick Mahomes around the entire field. He does, get pushed far upfield as Patrick Mahomes scrambles, but he has the speed, the range, the athleticism to make a recovery on this play. And here's my overall thing with this, and I wrote about this week. obviously it's difficult. We're dealing with a 3-play sample, right? Or a 3-game sample.
Mm-hmm.
It's tough to build your team around that. But Burrow is our main issue now. Like he and Josh Allen are the two guys. And Caleb and I were talking about this earlier. I think the Chiefs need to change their edge rusher plan. I think they can no longer just rely on, even if they had more powerful guys, they can no longer rely on these bigger, stiffer defensive ends because Burrow is too slippery as an athlete. He can move around too much. And you've got to have guys who have the range, the athleticism to chase him down because he's just too good in the pocket. Like even when you try and crush the pocket against him, he's able to kind of scramble and get out. And the main difference between Allen and Burrow is that the way you can get edge pressure versus Josh Allen is blitzing him because Allen's always kind of running fast. You cannot blitz Joe Burrow. He is the one quarterback in the NFL that I would say you can absolutely not blitz in any context. He knows your blitz too well. So you're going to have to generate speed. You have to make him force quick throws off the edge. You have to make him scramble like you would in a typical blitz. You have to do that with the blitz. Well, the only way to do that is to get faster defensive ends. So, obviously for the context of this season, there's nothing the Chiefs can do. Like they're just going to have to hope it doesn't matter if you play them again. Maybe they try different like stunts up front. Like I don't know. Yeah. But long term, I think they have to change their defensive ends to more flexible, more speed-based defensive ends. They'll have to get lighter. They'll have to sacrifice a little bit versus the run potentially. Not that the run defense is good anyways. But like that, I think that's the archetype they have to go with moving forward if they want any success pressuring Burrow.
Yeah, and Caleb, I want you to go off of that real quick because I know you and Nate were talking about that today.
Yeah, man. You know what, Nate, you were saying, I agree with. I think it's correct. You got these quarterbacks in the league right now. They're relying on athletic ability, but then you got Burrow, who's still hard to bring down in the pocket. But the whole idea, if you want to get into a team building aspect of things, defensive line should be the one room on your team where you say, we want to have the most bodies in here. I want guys who like Mike Dana, who are going to be solid run stuffers, but I want guys who can also bend the arc on like third and medium to get back there and make the sack. You want these more athletic guys because as these quarterbacks are going to run and, and even just Burrow sitting there, you got to be able to get in there quick. Blitzing doesn't always work against them, but if you want to have, the Chiefs, their defensive ends, Dunlap, Dana, Karlaftis, and Frank Clark, when they first brought him in, these guys are like, they've got the same body type as guys that Spags had in 2007 or 2009, back then when they're trying to sell out, stop, a run game, 30, 40 times a game. It doesn't necessarily work like that now, and they can't stop the run anyway. So, it's just disappointing to see that, maybe the game is starting to change around Spags in that aspect, but it's like you said, they have to address it in the offseason. It's going to be probably the hot topic here when it's all said and done this season.
And to defend Spags, I'll just say this real quick because I answered a lot of questions about this week. While I agree that Spagnuolo's typical defensive end is a dying breed, look at Tennessee. I've always brought up Tennessee this week. Tennessee builds their their defensive line room, a lot of more like power-based, long, powerful rushers. The difference between Tennessee and Kansas City is they actually fill their archetypes well. Like, and I know the Chiefs traded for Frank Clark, and he had all his issues. Like, we don't need to get into that, but he's a lot skinnier now. He's a different player. But like, even George Karlaftis, Karlaftis is this kind of presumed power rusher. I think that's what we all kind of assumed out of him. The problem is he's just, I don't want to make this I don't want to write him off. Like, he's too short and he's not explosive enough to generate a ton of power unless the tackle basically just doesn't, opens his hips too far, takes a bad pass set or whatever.
Right.
He's not naturally powerful, but he's also not naturally quick or fluid. So you're kind of left in situations what does George Karlaftis have in the NFL that really separates him? Again, I'm not going to write him off because it's too soon, right? And he's fine. It's just that that's kind of the thing is the Chiefs haven't necessarily built around Spags well. I don't know if these are all, I'm sure Spagnuolo wrote off on all these guys, but regardless, the results aren't showing.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think there is, something to that. I mean, you mentioned the depth, right? How you want just a bunch of guys, Caleb, you were mentioning that on the defensive line. Well, there is something to I think they maybe thought that they just got the wrong type of depth, right? They just got a bunch of hustle guys and guys that are going to give you great effort against the run. And even though again, they're not good against the run, but Dana and Karlaftis and even, even a guy, like Noddy is not depth, and you think like, hey, we got this solid nose tackle. Well, apparently you don't. So this is one place where they're missing Tershawn Wharton too. I really feel like Tershawn Wharton makes a difference in these kind of games where they're not getting pressure. They're doubling Chris Jones. Turk Wharton can dice up a guard by himself, and
Yes.
they don't really have, Dana, you'd hope could do that, but he hasn't really been able to as much. Although on that last play, where Higgins got the third down completion, he almost got him. But before we go off the rails too much, let's transition here. I'm going to talk offense here. Caleb's got the juicy stuff, but I'm going to save that for last because, it is worth pointing out the run game. The run game on offense on Sunday was good. It was good. I think they did learn their lesson a little bit from last year. They got away from it at times against the Bengals. We did see more carries for the tailbacks this week. We saw 22 of them actually for Jerick McKinnon and Isaiah Pacheco together. And they combined to average 5.3 yards a carry. And the only thing I'd say disappointing, and I don't have the clips of these, I just feel like they still could be a little better situationally, right? Hey, if you're 2nd and 3 in the red zone, don't throw 2 passes after that and settle for a field goal. Like, trust your run game that's been gashing them. And I think you could even make that same, lesson maybe for the last drive too. That last 3-play sequence they didn't run once, even though again they were gashing them. But just a good example, they were really gashing them specifically with outside zone left and the cutback lanes off of them. And this is where Wiley has really begun. He has impressed me, and honestly, he's probably earned this right tackle job at this point. I was thinking maybe Niang could come in, but there's no reason to mix it up right now. I think Wiley is as bad as he is in pass protection at times. Is Niang going to be that much better right off the bat? It's hard to tell. Maybe they can tell it in practice. So I think his play against the run is really good to see, and that's what you see here. So it's a zone left here, just typical zone blocking. And, Jerick obviously does a great job reading it, setting up the linebackers to cut back. But watch Wiley here just really, join Trey. Trey's got good engagement. Join Trey and just wash this all the way down. Clear that space out, right? And Kelsey does a great job himself here, back end, clearing this out, getting him on the ground. Just getting space, dude. Wiley did this over and over. I'm showing this one play, but we need to get to the next play. He just kept doing this. Look here, it's a zone left. And what I like about this one is he stays patient at first. He's not just committing to just washing this dude down right away. He's kind of just seeing what's going on, seeing who he can get a hand on. But as soon as he kind of feels the guy maybe get a little bit of penetration on him, boom, he's 2 hands. He's washing him down, right? And there goes another big chunk gain for Jerick. And this is worth pointing out. Tight end Noah Gray here, having a nice little play, actually kind of, getting hands on 2 guys and kind of just keep working, right? I like that work. Just get hands on dudes. This is a zone left, but that's the thing with zone runs is you just need to get hands on guys and just get them, just even if you're not blocking them, you think the correct way or whatever, just get hands on them and disrupt their path. That's really all you need to do a lot of the times as a receiver or a tight end in the open field. And that's what he does here. So it's good to see Noah Gray do that. And then this last one too, the touchdown run I thought was a really good play. It's a split zone play. Got Noah Gray on the split zone block. Perfect execution. Goes for the thigh, shoulder to thigh, just knocks him out, right? Just takes him completely out. Stalemates him, doesn't let him get any more penetration. And who else but Andrew Wiley, once again, washing down the line. Look at that. Look at the line that forms right there. You always love to see that. The cutback lane that forms right there, perfectly aligned. And then what I like about this too, though, is Pacheco, running hash number sideline, right, a little bit, in a low key way, right. He hits the cutback, but he doesn't try to bounce this back inside or like run over somebody to an extent. He runs away from guys, which is what he should do. Because one thing about Pacheco that's kind of funny is he's not as much of a hard runner as he is. He's not really a tackle breaker so far in his career. And I do think it's good to see him. This was kind of one of his better runs because I think he does avoid this tackle in an effective way, right? He runs away from it, kind of high knees it to get away from it and scores the touchdown. So I was impressed with the run game on Sunday. And I do think they're gelling, right? And I do think the Chiefs can trust them in games. I think a game coming up like Denver is a good game for it as well. Denver got some really good players in the back end and really good coverage players. But yeah, the front, is kind of exploitable, especially since Bradley Chubb has been traded. So I'm kind of excited to see maybe the run game continue to gel as we get into the postseason. I think Pacheco and McKinnon are both running really well. And maybe Ronald Jones kind of gets some play in this, and in a game coming up too. Maybe get him going a little bit too. But that the run game was impressive, right, guys? But Caleb, I know there were some things about the offense that we definitely need to talk about. So here's where I'm going to hand it off to you, and we'll have a little discussion about some of the bad things that went on offense and contributed to the loss. Because as much as the defense, it did drive me crazy, the defensive performance, right? We talked about the pass rush, we talked about we didn't even talk about all the missed tackles and open field, right, from the defense. This offense still had a chance to win this game and overcome all of those defensive flaws, right? And they just didn't get it done. So Caleb, what can you tell us about that kind of the offensive failures?
Well, I think a lot of it, I'm trying to pull these clips up right now, but I think a lot of it had to do with, with the issues in pass protection. I thought that was, pretty much the big deal of it. And actually, here we go right now. Before I get into it real quick, just one thought on that run game. This guy right here, 52. Can you guys see my mouse right now? No?
Cannot.
All right. Well, I'm just saying this guy, Creed Humphrey right here, he hasn't gotten as much fanfare as he did last season. He had the whole movement. He had the whole city. Yeah. He is having almost a better season this year than he did last year. He's playing the game at a more cerebral level. You can see he's really starting to figure it out. I thought that a lot of the run game started because him and Trey Smith and Wiley got that good push, and they got everyone on the angle. But before I get into too much negative, I'll share a couple positives real quick. But obviously, 57, Orlando Brown, that's the guy everyone wants to hear about. Right. He is, he's taken, there's been a lot of takes on him this week, and I think a lot of them are rightfully so. In some ways, he's almost put himself in some of the situation. But this play is not really terrible, but it is going to have me bring up a few points. So you see here, the Chiefs just come out, they're basically one tight end, one running back set. And this is 3rd and 15, by the way. So everybody knows they're getting ready to throw the football. You got Trey Hendrickson out there on the edge. And you see he's starting to come around the edge here. But you see Jerick McKinnon's going to come. And McKinnon doesn't necessarily give a chip, but his body presence, because he's been laying some dudes down with some good chip blocks this year. So, Hendrickson's wise. He knows he's going to get inside. But then Orlando kind of has a feeling he is also, if I just rewind it real quick, you can see Hendrickson is kind of angled inside almost like he wants to try to get there anyway. After a second, he gets out of his stance. He's running. Brown gets hands on. Hendrickson actually wins hands on. This is going to come back to hurt Orlando a lot during the day, but not really in the first half. They were just kind of playing with them a little bit. But then you start to come, and Orlando gets big with his left hand. He rips him over. He's got him. And look, the big thing about this play is you take a look at Orlando's feet. They're square. He's got his feet square. He's fighting with this guy. This doesn't really bother Mahomes. This isn't the stuff that bothers him. It's 3rd and 15. He wants to be a gunslinger. He wants to keep things in front of him. So this isn't bothering him. This kind of movement right here doesn't bother him, and he sticks with it. And this still, even though he's deep in the pocket, this isn't bothering Mahomes because he's IDing, downfield what's happening. And really, the entire O-line does a good job with just a 3-man rush here covering it up. Unfortunately, you see Allegretti maybe gotten a little too far downfield for something that didn't really have any impact on the play, and it takes away a pretty freaky pass from Patrick Mahomes. This was an example of, some good pass protection, though, from the Chiefs. And this is what you have to do against 3-man pressure. The Bengals are bailing guys. You have to be able to win 3-man pressures. It's not allowed for you to lose when the defensive line only brings 3 guys like that. So let me get my next clip. Pulled on up here.
Yeah, but you're right. No, you're right. Against 3-man rushes, there's just no excuse. There really isn't. There's just no, there's no, okay, well, this happened, so that's why there's pressure. It's no excuse. And so, it's good to see them block it up really well in that play. That was a good rep.
I'm trying to get my second one. All right. This is on the goal line. This play right here is a 3rd down and 3. Let me get it. They get the motion across. I think one of the reasons, Ron, I think the run game was effective, as going back to one of your points a little bit, is because Andy started bringing the motions. He started setting those linebackers up with the angles. They're trying to do the same thing here. and Mahomes is even going to give a little run action fake. It's 3rd and 3. The Bengals have been waiting for this all game. They know there's no shot the Chiefs are going to run the football here. There's 0% chance they're taking the ball out of 15's hands here, even though if they did hand it off, you have what I think is a favorable box, almost, because they almost would be getting ready to have the numbers advantage. I think if they can get it blocked up and Pacheco could hit something to the right side, he could probably find a way to fight in for 3. They could maybe he might have to break a tackle or bust through 55 or 57, but I think that's something that he's capable of. But you see, Mahomes is showing that little run action look right there. I don't think anybody is fooled. It's not bothering anybody. And we'll just kind of let the play out before I go back. But pressure, throws it away. It's a longer pass play. They're trying to wait for Justin Watson to get across the end zone here. But let's take a look out there to Orlando again. He's got a tight end help. And to me, when I saw this play the first time, I said, it's not really like a play action zone pass. It's like a full slide protection to the left with a run action show just to slow down the linebackers, because Orlando comes out of his stance and you can kind of see he almost looks like he comes out at a flat angle instead of getting into a vertical set. Right here, you can see he's almost flat setting. To me, this doesn't make sense why the staff would have him do this or why he would be doing this himself, because if he's got this tight end here, it really, why is he doing this flat set? It should be giving him time to get into his vertical protection, if anything, because if, having a tight end there is going to make him have to go even further. And that's not what you want. When he's going his lateral set, his flat set, you want to get hands on as soon as possible. And he tries, but he's late and he turns his shoulders, and that's no good. If you're an offensive lineman and you turn your shoulders like that, this defensive end, especially a guy like Trey Hendrickson, he's going to eat you for lunch on this one, because he just said, you just made this a lot easier on me. And it's good protection across the board, really. They're going to, outside of this, but Hendrickson bending the arc outside. Mahomes sees it. He's trying to step up. You see everyone trying, they're getting into the route. You see Watson underneath, maybe a second, could have been a bullet pass type deal right there. And he just has to throw it away, too little, too late. My big thing about this is, as much as people want to beat up Orlando, I don't understand what his assignment, if they're telling him to vertical set it, or if they're telling him it doesn't really make a lot of sense to lateral set when you have a tight end right there. And to be honest, they don't respect the run game at all. They were looking past the entire way. So it made, this little hesitation easier. And look at Hendrickson before the play even gets going. He's ready to go. He knows what's going on. He knows it's going to be a pass, and they fire it up there.
Man, that's a really good point, though. Yeah, there's really no reason to set flat like that, especially against a speed rusher and a hands winner around the edge like Hendrickson. And that's the thing. Is there anything to, Caleb, just the fact that Hendrickson is maybe just better than we give him credit for and is one of the best hands fighters in the league, and Brown, that's just his biggest weakness, and maybe that's why it just looks that bad against Cincinnati? Or I know you got more, but
I don't know. It's weird. And Orlando has typically been a good lateral setter. He's a good 45-degree flat setter, whatever you want to call it. That was his bread and butter in Baltimore. That's been what he's typically been good at. My whole thing with that is, Hendrickson's going to line up. He might have lined up wider, but, he still might have lined up that wide even if they had the tight end in there. But having the tight end in there is kind of a direct result of them maybe not trusting him as much, because I actually took some tallies here, and on Orlando either received a chip from the running back or either help from the tight end, that help being either tight end presence on a play, or there was a couple of reps where Noah Gray actually physically got in there and blocked him up. And you get in there, and that was about there was 11 plays that they gave him help on, and that came out to just under 20% of total game snaps. That's a lot for a tackle. You expect something like that for Andrew Wiley, who, and I know Wiley's been getting a bad rap. He doesn't really deserve it all, though, as much as some people would say. I think he's playing a lot better football than people think. But this is the most talked about play in Kansas City. And I'm going to go back to what I said on the first play. It's a third down situation, 3rd and 3. Nobody cares. It kind of ties in some points to the other two. It's 3rd and 3 here. Nobody for the Bengals seems to care. They don't care. they'll play basically a one-man box with a bunch of linebackers walked up on the ball, a bunch of those fast arc benders types we've been talking about. There's Joseph Osai on the edge. He is already getting ready to rip him in. Jerick McKinnon kind of flares a little bit out of the backfield like he's going to try to maybe go in. But as you can see, it's instant pressure up the middle. And really, he's got all his weight down on his hand. He's setting them up. Orlando just oversets. Orlando needs to just kind of sit down and be patient right here, but he's not. And his hands are down low. His hands are at his hips. And now he's lunging. He's wide. And I showed you that first example. His feet were square, and he was able to move and go work with Hendrickson. He's not able here, and Osai he's a far better athlete. So he has to reach and lunge. And now you've got problems, my friend. He can't really grab him because it's going to be a guaranteed certified hold the way this game was going. So he's just trying to press him down. And even really, if he can just get another little bit of him on Osai, but you can see that hand in there from Osai. He's getting ready to forklift it off. They're getting ready to go to town, and he just has to let go. And you guys can see it. It's getting ready to come open underneath the screen. But you see Travis Kelce up there. He's getting ready to come open. You see Juju up there. Juju's really the guy no one's looking at. And, if Mahomes can make this linebacker react to Kelce a little bit, Juju's probably going to end up being wide open. They kind of come together. Now he's got both of them, and he said scramble is on. But like Nate was saying, you have a high-level athlete as a defensive end who literally had a career game. This first sack, it's a rookie getting a sack here, comes down, makes the play. And that was pretty much the game. The Chiefs don't get the ball back after that. And really, my big thing about this is if that had happened to Andrew Wiley, it would have been acceptable, but I would have been like, well, why don't you have help for Andrew Wiley on the most important play of the game? Why isn't there that? Orlando Brown's a guy. He came into Kansas City. They traded a first-round draft pick for him. They traded picks. And then in the offseason, he says he wants to be the highest-paid tackle in the NFL. If you want to be the highest paid tackle in the NFL, sometimes in a key situation for your team, you have to be able to stand out there alone. It's like a great cornerback. Exactly. You say, like this great cornerback's on an island. Left tackle's an island too. You got to be able to stand out there by yourself versus whoever they put against you and make a play. And in the second half, the Bengals exposed the Chiefs scheme. They put their best speed rusher on him on the biggest down of the game and said, go to work. So that's certainly not helping him. And then just taking a look on critical downs, which third and fourth down plays I count as critical downs. Orlando was just over 50%. He went on 13 of those. He only won 7. He lost 6. That's nowhere near good enough for a franchise caliber left tackle.
Man, great points. Nate, here's where I'll just ask you. I mean, where do you feel about Orlando Brown after this game? Because it does just feel like to me, like what Caleb was just getting at, the Bengals just put speed rushers on him. Why wouldn't every team just put their best hands guy, their fastest, biggest bursty guy? And there's a lot of contenders, that have some guys that can fill that role. So I don't know. How do you feel about Brown after this?
Well, here's where, first of all, great points that were brought up. I think what's interesting is if we look at Buffalo and Cincinnati, what was kind of the thing they both did a little bit? They, did a lot of 3-man rush at the spy. But what they did smartly was they were able to get isolated two-way goes against our tackles, particularly Orlando Brown. So obviously any offensive tackle, I didn't play offensive tackle, but that's difficult, right? If you can have someone go through your chest or either shoulder, that's a lot. But it seems like teams are targeting Brown's lack of agility. They're trying to make him vertical set in space. And if he, oversets, we're going to push him inside. Otherwise, if he, short sets or he flat sets, we're going to go around the corner. If he misses his jump set, which I don't feel like he's jump setting as much this year. I don't know why. That could be just a coaching point. But it's a problem. And I'm not interested right now in getting into the politics of how much he's worth. It's too soon to say. I'm sure if he made free agency, he would still get a ton of money. But certainly these teams are targeting him. And, now there's 2 games of tape of teams doing a 3-man rush at the spy, but able to get the Chiefs to slide their protection to the, sliding defensive lineman or a linebacker that's mugging. And then they're like, we are going to attack these tackles on a 2-way go, particularly Orlando Brown. And so far this year, he just hasn't held up for whatever reason, he was playing better last year. Like, that's all I'm gonna say. He was playing better last year. It's been worse this year, and it's a problem because unfortunately you're probably gonna have to play the Bengals again. Probably gonna have to play the Bills again. The Miami is really fast at edge rusher, so it's a problem.
Yeah, exactly. No, that's how I came away with it too. I do think we're gonna get down the stretch of the season. He may look a little better because we don't see as threatening of edge rushing talents, for the rest of the regular season. We don't have that, tough of a schedule. Although the Raiders in Week 18, that game's going to mean something. It will, and they have some good edge rushers. But I agree. I think it's going to rear its ugly head again in the postseason, and we're just going to have to. One thing we could have broke down too is I think Mahomes, as good of a game as he played, because I think he played a pretty good game. He took advantage of the blitz when it was there and stuff, but there were times I think he could have helped the pass protection by just getting rid of the ball in rhythm and getting the ball out of his hands quicker and not holding the ball as long. I think there were some things with that, and I think he can learn from that for the next time. So we may see you guys the next time. I think we're going to try to get more consistent with the AP film room here. We got some great guys to break film down, and we wouldn't be taking advantage of that if we weren't doing this weekly. So down the stretch, guys, it's the home stretch. We'll be doing this frequently. Keep watching. Please rate and review. Leave your comments if you got any. Appreciate it. Hit us up on Twitter. All of our ats are in the StreamYard little bubbles there. Again, appreciate you guys listening. For Nate, for Caleb, I'm Ron. We'll catch you next time.